Oh, sawa. Hi.
Hello.
Yes.
Okay, sawa. You're in. Okay, sorry. I'm so sorry.
Sound iko poa?
Iko sawa.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you. Hey. Yeah?
Hello, everybody.
Namtumia nini link yake ka panelist side tu.
Hi.
So good afternoon, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. Welcome everybody to this webinar on planning with people, focusing on informal neighborhood upgrading processes in Nairobi. The webinar is an event to mark Urban October and has been convened this afternoon by Concrete Design Initiative. My name is Regina Opondo and I work for KDI. I'll be your moderator for this afternoon. As we begin, I want to first of all apologize again that we have started so late. We've been having a few technical hitches. And I beg that you forgive us. It's our first rodeo, but we are really grateful that you have made time this afternoon to join us for this discussion. We hope that it will be the first of many conversations that we have around planning with people, around informal neighborhood upgrading processes, generally about urban development with a focus on Nairobi, Kenya, but also globally, sharing best practices, learning from each other. So welcome again to this session this afternoon. We hope you will enjoy it. Just to let you know a little bit about your conveners for this afternoon. KDI is a community development and design organization working with under-resourced and underserved communities to advance equity and activate the unrealized potential in their neighborhood. We do this primarily through advocacy, research, planning, and build works where possible. And Urban October, and I hear my sound is still having a problem. Urban October is an opportunity, I think, for all of us to be part of the conversation about challenges and opportunities created by the fast rate of change in our cities and in our towns. The month of October begins with World Habitat Day on the first Monday of the month, which for this month fell on 5th of October, 2020, and ends with World Cities Day on 31st October. World Habitat Day, the theme was Housing for All, a Better Urban Future, and World Cities Day theme will be A Better City, Better Life, and the sub-theme for this year is Valuing Our Communities and Cities. The global observance will actually be hosted in Nakuru, Kenya. So we're quite happy to also be able to hold this webinar in Kenya, from Kenya, to celebrate the same. So in light of these various themes, and also looking at the Kenyan and Nairobi context, where we have a lot of urban development, a lot of upgrading schemes going on, we thought what better way to mark these various themes, but also this month of Urban October, than to have a conversation that ties everything together and actually pulls us to the heart of the conversation. Because why do we do urban planning, urban development, urban design? It is for the people to improve their lives, to improve their environment, to improve their welfare. So today's conversation is focusing on planning with people, where people are at the heart of all planning and designing processes, and focusing particularly on informal neighborhoods, upgrading processes in Nairobi. Just to say a little bit before I launch into the great panel that I have today, you all know, well, you might not know, but about 880 million of the world's population live in informal settlements, where they suffer with various issues, including insecurity of tenure, poor access to basic services, and insecure livelihoods. In particular, some areas such as those found in Nairobi and in Kenya have complicated land historical issues as well. As cities rapidly urbanize, governments worldwide face the challenge of improving living conditions, especially for the most vulnerable of our urban populations. The government of Kenya has rolled out various initiatives in response to this, in collaboration sometimes with UN Habitat and with other stakeholders, including civil society organizations such as ourselves. And some of these have included the Kenya Slum Upgrading Program, KenSUP, in 2004. And even the recent parts of Nairobi, we've seen declarations of special planning areas in some of the biggest informal settlements. And this paves way for a 2-year planning process, which should be participatory with citizens at the heart of that. And we were happy to see that the declaration of the Kibra Special Planning Area actually spoke to that. And to prepare for an integrated development plan for these areas that have been designated as special planning areas. So with the various projects going on in Nairobi, in Kenya, and elsewhere, part of what we've seen, and we hope to hear from the panelists, is how key the role of communities are in this process, because it is all done for them and in their name. And they play a key role in designing, in decision-making, and in influencing and informing what these plans would look like. Our session today will run for about 1.5 hours to 2 hours max. And what we'll do is we'll have an input from each of our panelists. They will speak for about 5 to 8, 10 minutes, sharing their various perspectives. And then we will open it up for question and answer, because this is a conversation, it's not a lecture, it's a dialogue. And so we'd also want to hear from those of you who are in the audience. And once that is done, then we'll hear back from the panelists, and then we'll wrap up and hopefully continue this conversation another day. So this will be the first of many conversations. So welcome everybody. I can see 2 of my panelists have made it in. So for me, that means we can start the conversation. I will be joined this afternoon by a very special and esteemed and knowledgeable panel, and I feel actually humbled to have such a great panel joining us this afternoon. We were to be joined by QS Charles Wafula Sikuku, the Director of Housing and Urban Development, Nairobi Metropolitan Services. He has sent his apologies. He has just been summoned into a security meeting, but hopefully if it finishes early, he will also join us. So if he does join us, then he will speak at the end of the meeting. Our second panelist is Ms. Juliet Rita. She's a seasoned urban and transport planner with skills and knowledge in urban planning, infrastructure planning, environmental management, and urban development policy. She started her career in the public sector, where she rose to senior physical planner, working for the then Ministry of Lands and Housing. She later went into practice as a private consultant and has worked with the Government of Kenya, UN Habitat, the World Bank, German Development Bank, amongst many other agencies. She has since moved also into academia and is currently a lecturer at the Department of Spatial Planning and Urban Design at the Technical University of Kenya. She holds an MSc Infrastructure Planning from the University of Stuttgart, Germany, and a bachelor degree in planning from the University of Nairobi. She's a registered physical planner and serves as a board member with the Physical Planners Registration Board. And she's a proud mother of 2 boys, a dairy farmer, and loves animals. Ruben and the various other Mukurus, where security, land tenure, and policy change to support inclusion of informal settlements in urban planning has been key. He has been involved in the process of developing the Mukuru Integrated Development Plan for the Mukuru Special Planning Area. So he brings practical experience on that. And he has a BSc in Communication and Public Relations, a diploma in Project Management, and is currently undertaking his master's degree in Business Administration at Nairobi, and actually has co-written a publication on scaling participation in informal settlements upgrading. So we look forward to his input, giving us insight onto the community and community focus. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to this webinar. Without further ado, I think I want to launch into the first speaker. So I'll be asking Juliet Rita to make her contribution, and I'll be hoping to hear from her AAK's role in bringing in the government and corporate sector during the planning and designing process for the settlement. So karibu, Juliet.
Thank you very much, Regina. I hope you can hear me well. Perfect. So I'm Juliet Rita, and I'm currently the chair of the Town Planners chapter at AAK. Now, the Architectural Association of Kenya actually is an umbrella body for professionals across built environments. We've been in existence for 50 years. So we have on board architects, landscape architects, town planners, engineers, environmental designers, project managers, and quantity surveyors. So in total, we have 7 chapters under the Architectural Association of Kenya. Being an association that brings together professionals across board, we've been able to really lobby and build our advocacy in terms of having policies that are people-centered, policies that build on people's knowledge as well as bringing in the technical expertise. So I will not mention all the areas that we have been able to touch on. Rather, I'll highlight some of the key policies that we have been able to push and some of the current acts that we've been able to push so that we can bring on board active public participation, as well as bringing forth initiatives that would help us improve the built environment, and in particular also the informal settlements. So with this, the one key, of course, act that we work with and we have been able to participate actively in its review was the Planning Act, which is now known as the Physical Planning and Land Use Act, the PLUPA as we call it, which was actually enacted in 2019, as well as its guidelines. And this is the act that will that has seen also the enablement of planning for special areas, like we are talking of the special area for Mukuru kwa Jenga and Kibera, and also the act that gives guidelines for the formulation of other plans that enable us be able to plan and design and manage our urban areas. We also have the Urban Areas and Cities Act, which is mainly for urban areas. And this is also very key, especially when we talk of the municipalities, the municipal boards, in terms of also people participating in the county integrated development plans and other plans that really touch on the livelihoods of people living in urban areas. And last but not least, we also have the building code. And this is very critical, especially when we are talking about standards. And standards influence a lot of what we want to achieve on the ground, because we can have very good plans, we can lobby and have people participate and create very good plans, but the standards that we have could be very high, which has been the case, especially touching on informal upgrading. We realize that what we have as the building code advocates for use of very expensive materials, very costly kind of spaces in terms of how we arrange our buildings. And all this becomes a costly affair and something which is not easily achievable, especially if you're looking at informal settlements. So this is the active, this is one of the areas where we are still actively involved in terms of seeing how we can review the existing building code so that we can have flexible standards as well as something which is achievable, especially when we come to upgrading of informal settlements, as well as enabling the local common mwananchi to be able to build up something which is affordable and still up to standard. One of the key gaps that we have also been able to identify as AEK is the gap between the professional, the policymakers, and the citizen on the ground. We may talk of public participation, but we find that, yes, we have it written on paper. We have very good acts and very good laws that enable people to be able to participate and actually require that whenever the government, whether at the national level or the county level, or even if it's a consultant undertaking the planning exercise, has to involve the people. But we find there's a gap in that there's this perceived gap where people on the ground see the professional coming to impose their own ideas. Of course, some of them are very technical. Some of them are not presented in a manner that the citizen can be able to absorb and understand and comprehend what is being presented. So as a matter of fact, then you find that people are not able to actively participate, and they're not fully aware of the whole process. So they don't know exactly after they appear for the meeting, what is going to happen next, how they can push for their ideas to be incorporated in the plans. So this is a major gap that we have been able to identify. And what we have done as AEK is actually come up with a program. We call it Je Unamjengo. So in the Je Unamjengo, what we do is publicly, we have public clinics where we have professionals interacting with the local mwananchi on the ground, just to take them through the processes of planning, design, as well as approval processes at the county, so that they can be able to understand and really comprehend how they can participate actively in the management, in the planning, in the designing of their neighborhoods. So this is some of the things that we are doing as AAK. So thank you very much, Regina. I'll stop at that.
Thank you very much, Juliet, I think, and for particularly reminding us that professionals do not just remain in their ivory tower of professionalism, but have a key role to play in bridging some of the gaps that appear between the state and citizens, between other professionals and citizens, but also in helping citizens participate in these kind of processes by simplifying, understanding the process, and even providing technical input to legislation and policy. So thank you very much for that input. I'm now going to invite Sabrina to speak to some of the experience. Sabrina, if you could share with us some of the experience of KDI in working in informal settlements, but also share with us how we can secure community buy-in and ownership by residents when we do some of these planning processes. And it would be useful if you can also list some of the mechanisms that allow for community participation. Karibu sana, Sabrina.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the introduction, Regina. I hope you all can hear me well. As Regina said, I'm working for KDI as a senior planning coordinator, and my background is in urban and regional development planning. And I have the honor today to speak on behalf of the organization about our experience in planning and designing with people in informal settlements. And as you might know, or some of you might know, we have been mainly working here in Kenya, in Kibera. As Regina said, I will try to touch on a couple of questions which were posed to us as panelists. So I will be touching on our experience in working in informal settlements, in how to secure community buy-in and ownership by residents of what is being planned or designed, and as well on a number of mechanisms which allow for community participation at all stages of planning and design processes. I don't need to introduce KDI, I think, as Regina did this at the beginning, so I will straight go to looking back at where KDI is coming from and how we came to working in Kibera. So I think our story, or the story of KDI, started in 2006, which is almost 15 years ago now. And from the beginning, the idea really was to find a different approach to design and planning, which puts residents at the center of the planning and designing process. And in 2006, we started in Silanga, which is one of 13 villages in Kibera, with our first so-called Kibera Public Space project, which was co-designed and planned together with an existing community-based organization and residents surrounding the area where the CBO was based. And the project involved transforming a so-called waste space, which can be considered as an underused space or a space with which something wasn't right at the time, into a productive community space benefiting the community at large. Residents in the area and the group who was going to run the space were the ones determining the project, its elements, such as, for example, a community hall, a playground, but as well some economic and social activities like skills development programs and saving and loaning, among other things. And these elements were selected based on a process in which needs were expressed and a vision of the future for the area and the community was developed together. Then since 2006, we have been partnering with several other CBOs as well based in Kibera and built around 10 more Kibera public space projects similar to the first one in 2006. Going a bit more into detail about the process, I actually think that this is answering the second question, which was how can we create community buy-in and greater ownership? So all of our projects really in Kibera have been demand-driven, as we start usually our process by undertaking a call for proposal to existing community-based organizations. And then after assessing the submitted proposals by such groups and awarding the groups, we together with the group and the people living around the area in which the group operates, undertook in the past, and if we were to do it again, a process of identifying the challenges, needs, and opportunities the community is facing in the area. We then developed, together with the residents and the group, a vision of the desired future. Let residents, together with the group, prioritize which interventions and activities to undertake. We have been providing opportunities to review and revise designs, and we involve the community at large in the building process of the interventions and the elements chosen by them, as well as in the development of the programs they might come up with. Through this process, we have seen that we are able to generate trust in what is being done by being open about the steps in the design and planning process and providing opportunities to contribute, to review and to discuss, as well as to rationalize together. And lastly, bringing people together to agree on a joint vision for development in the area has as well contributed to that. We have been able to generate buy-in through residents determining the vision of the future of their area and by prioritizing the interventions and activities to be implemented. And lastly, through providing opportunity to take part in the construction of the interventions planned, we have seen that we can achieve greater ownership of the projects after completion and over time. Now, if we think about what we can learn from this process, we have been using on rather smaller interventions for larger planning interventions, and maybe as well from other projects we have seen in Kibera, like KENSAP or the NYS interventions. I mean, the question is, what can we learn from this process? I think it is crucial always to understand the context in which we are planning and designing. And that can only be done through identifying opportunities, the challenges, and the needs together with the people who we are supposed to benefit, or who are supposed to benefit from any potential development that is being designed and planned. If we fail to do so, and we have seen that projects and interventions can miss to address the real needs of those they are supposed to benefit, they might even be rejected. They might benefit people who are not intended to be benefiting from the intervention. Opportunities for engagement need to be provided from the start of any process, ensuring transparency in the process, generating trust, leading to plans that actually address the challenges on the ground and the actual needs of the people who are supposed to benefit, and not those of others. And residents can, for example, be involved through being part of the data collection at the beginning of any process. There need to be structures for engagement laid out, which make sure that they are open to all sectors of society, meaning different groups, minority groups, and people with special needs, etc. And through making sure that planned interventions provide opportunities for residents to take part in their implementation. In addition, projects and plans which intend to bring real change and impact typically need to address more than one challenge, need to be more than a physical intervention, and should be integrated into what already exists, meaning not being done in isolation. And also consider what might be planned somewhere else in other areas in the near future to be sustainable and not negatively affect others in other areas. And I think we'll be able to discuss more about this once we open for questions. I think that's it from my side.
Very much, Sabrina, for that input. I think two things that have come out, that have stood out very clearly for me from your intervention, is that not including people or not including people in the process correctly could lead us to miss to address their real needs, and could cause more harm than good, and could even lead to rejection of the plan and the projects that follow after the plan, which would then make it an exercise in futility. And when we consider the resources that are plowed into such exercises and what they could do in lives, we wouldn't want to go that way. So as you said, we will continue the discussion. I want to now invite Patrick to give us his intervention. Patrick, we know that urban planning is normally a technical, but also a social and a political process that focuses on development and design, looking at land use and built environment, amongst many other things. And in fact, when you look at upgrading of informal neighborhoods, that usually even becomes more fraught with other complications. So you're looking at diverse interests, you're looking at power dynamics, you have landowners, you have landlords, you have tenants, you have men, women, children, youth, persons with disability. So in trying to ensure that community drives the process, community remains at the heart of the process, how do you pull in all these diverse voices? We hope to get some lessons from your experience in Mukuru about how to better manage some of these things and ensure that the most marginal voices are also not left out. So Patrick, karibu.
Thank you, Regina. So my name is Patrick Njoroge. I work for Akiba Mashinani Trust. Sorry, I was late for the meeting. So I probably just discuss about my experience with the Mukuru Special Planning Area. So Mukuru is a very big settlement within Nairobi. It's a settlement that has Mukuru kwa Jenga, Mukuru kwa Ruben, and Mukuru Viwandani. The settlement that with around 100,000 households. So Mukuru was declared as a special planning area by the county government of Nairobi in 2017. The county governments are given power to declare an area as a special planning area if such an area is experiencing unique development challenges and opportunities. So due to the challenges and opportunities that exist in Mukuru, and you know there are so many challenges, the county declared the area as a special planning area in August 2017, after which the county is mandated by law to plan the area within 2 years. So when the area was declared as a special planning area, the biggest challenge the county had is how do we ensure that the plans that are developed by the plans that are developed in the area are plans that are reflective of the people's aspirations. There are plans that are contextualized to the realities that exist within Mukuru, and also there are plans that are flexible and are truly reflect the area. So we had actually, when the declaration happened, our biggest challenge is how do you ensure that we capture the aspiration of all the people. And after a lot of thinking around it and engagement, we adopted what we call Leave No One Behind model. So the Leave No One Behind model is to ensure that when the plans are developed, every person in Mukuru is given an opportunity to participate. So the model, how we created it is in Mukuru, the whole of Mukuru, we have 30 villages. So we realized that having meetings in each of those villages will be it would be to be a lot of work, and then the villages are almost similar. So we combine those villages into 13 segments, under which we looked at, like the segments were formed to ensure that they are somehow people are facing the same challenges. The households in each segment were almost similar. So we had segments of 8,000 households in Mukuru. Then underneath each segment, what is we use the model of Nyumba Kumi, the one that is used by the government to fight insecurity and counterterrorism. So what we did that under each segment, what we did is that we numbered each and every house in that segment. We counted every person in that segment. So when you say number is your number, and you give each household under each segment a number, a unique address number that each person that belongs to a household can associate with. Then we collected data from each household to understand the numbers, the household size, the challenges, some of the challenges they're facing, the issues of rent, how much people pay for services, etc. Then after that, what we did is that if we go to Mukuru, we find most plots are houses, most plots are 8 to 12 houses. So that is what we called the Nyumba Kumi. So under each Nyumba Kumi, after engaging with them, we had a representative to represent the people within that Nyumba Kumi. Then 10 plots were merged to form a subcluster. So under each segment, we had 80 subclusters of 100 households. So that's at the subcluster level. That's in order to give a platform for everyone in the USPA. We were looking at several thematic areas because the plan was an integrated plan. So we were looking at the issues of water, sanitation, and energy. We were looking at the issues of health. We are looking at the issues of environment. We are looking at the issues of land. We're looking at the issues of housing, infrastructure, and commerce. Looking at the issues of finance. So all these issues are to ensure that the plan that is developed in Mukuru covers all the aspects. So what happened is that because under each of those thematic areas, the county plus us, we are able to mobilize organizations with expertise along those lines to assist the county develop the plans together with the people. So what we did is that before we allowed these thematic areas to come to Mukuru, is that we had to organize this structure. We had to ensure that the people are aware of what they're participating about. Had to give them, to create that awareness. You have to have the people had to have discussions before each of the consortium under those thematic areas come to listen to them. So what we did is that under each subcluster, we had meetings. The committee held meetings at those levels. We had a group of mobilizers who were trained, and they were helping us now hold the meetings at those subcluster levels. Subcluster level is the 100 households. So they have the meetings there. If it's the issues of water, sanitation, and energy, they discuss those issues within that level. So every person there is given an opportunity to discuss the issues. Like in water, we want our water, if the plants will come, our water should come like this. The issues of sanitation, if people say what kind of sanitation solutions they want. So then after each subcluster meeting, we held under each subcluster meeting, that subcluster, they elect one person who is going to represent them at the segment level, because the consultations, the SPA consultation meetings are happening at the segment level, where we have 8,000 households. So under each segment, you had 80 people coming from Nyumba Kumi, the subcluster. Then that way they come now, they elect someone who comes at the subcluster level, at the segment level, to present the views the committee have given. So we had 7 thematic areas. So each subcluster was electing 7 different people to come and represent them at the segment consultation meetings. So the representation, we had to make sure that we have youths that are also come to represent them. We had women, we had people with disability, we had structure owners, because Mukuru, the interest there are so deep. We have people like the structure owner who feel that they're the ones who are supposed to be consulted on everything. And the tenants, because they are tenants, they should not be consulted. So we have also the village elders. Like for instance, the normal way of doing meetings in most of these informal settlements, if you go there, you talk to a village elder, the village elder maybe talks with the chief and other village elders, they come and mobilize for you, some few people, they come to a meeting and discuss. If you come for a different thing, the same people who are mobilized in another meeting are the ones who always come. So to avoid that and to ensure that we are able to give a platform for every person to come and discuss their views at the segment level, we're able to trickle down to ensure that every person has been given that opportunity. So in Mukuru, we held, in the planning process, we held around 100, the consultation meetings that were held were about 110, discuss the different thematic areas. We have also held now the other informal meetings that are there. You can imagine most of the subclusters under each segment, and there are 80 subclusters, and we had that team. You can see the committee meetings also that the committee themselves did. So when we felt that the community is ready, that's when we now let the organizations that are helping the county to come and discuss with the community so that they can receive their views. So probably I can give an example of some of the plans how they were developed. We had a sector that was looking at the housing, infrastructure, and commerce. We were not looking at the housing, but we were looking at the infrastructure. So for instance, if you are, the sector was looking at the land use, mostly they were looking at doing the roads and looking for the spaces to lay down the infrastructure for sewer, water, electricity, and etc. So when you go to the community, actually that sector did more meetings than the other sectors. So we go with a map of the area. So if you're meeting like people in one village, we go there, we put the map down, we discuss with them, we give them the guidance of the levels of roads that are required, the major ones, the minor ones, the pedestrian. Then themselves, using the marker pen, they draw on the map the kind of roads they want, the levels where they want, like these bigger roads, put them here, the smaller roads, put them here. So that way, the only thing the planners are doing is now to rationalize those roads that they can be able, because you go for one area, they give this, you go to another area, they draw this. So just to connect them, to rationalize them, to make sense. So that's one of the things. And the plan has really been developed by the community. There are so many, like right now, the NMS right now is implementing the plans. And people have willingly, due to the involvement, people have willingly removed their structures where they had planned for the roads. So I think that I can just say that in a nutshell. And just to say that the process for all these committee process, it took a long time, and the committee process coming up with those levels of community participation, it's not cheap. It's time consuming, because we started the creation of those structures in 2016. The first consultation that was done in 2018 September. So it took us almost 2 years to come up with those structures before the committee can be consulted. So the process is time consuming, requires a lot of resources, but it's required to ensure that the plans that you're developing are plans that are reflective of the aspiration of the people of those areas. It's easier for planners, for the government to sit down in an office and plan. That one will take 2 weeks, 3 weeks, but the sustainability component will be lacking. So we felt the need to really engage at those levels so that we ensure that the plans that are developed are not only easier to implement, but also sustainable. Thank you, Regina. Can I take questions?
Asante sana, Patrick. I think the most profound thing you've said is the leave no one behind. So ensuring that you invested time and resources and starting all the way from Bakumi, going all the way to the top. I think that is useful, and we will probably have a question for you around that. It is now open for questions. So I have so far received a couple of questions, which I will share, and then we can go back to the panelists to answer some of them. The first question I have is from Smith Oma, which is to all panelists. To what extent can affected communities be involved in implementing technical aspects of plans? Or what is the scope of involving communities in implementation? I also have two other questions, so maybe I'll take three, and then we can do another round of questions. So the other question that I also have is, now that we don't have government in the room, we had hoped to have them here. What was the experience in Mukuru in terms of interfacing with the government as you were developing the plan, but also now that there's implementation? How is that relationship going? How involved and what opportunities are available to interface with government? And then for Sabrina, I've also got a question from the audience about what are the lessons we could learn from other jurisdictions to inform our practice in Nairobi. I think I can give the panelists time to answer those three questions while I receive, I have one more question. Let me add one more question. From Paul, how have you considered the affordability of the housing projects to the household? Any criteria used? And this is also to all panelists. So I think there are only a few that were specific. We will start with Juliet, or we can start in the reverse. We can start now with Patrick, then Sabrina, and then Juliet. Patrick, are you ready to take the round of questions?
Hello, yeah. Probably I can start with the Smith's question.
Yeah.
Smith was asking how the committee have been involved in the implementation aspect. I think one of the things that the plans recommended is that when the infrastructure upgrade is happening, the community be given the first opportunity of implementing to the levels where they can. And I think that has been, I think with now, because the already implementation is happening in Mukuru, we have then the NMS is involving the community even in the construction of the roads. Like before, they're not using a contractor who comes from a Chinese contractor who comes and does everything. So the committee are the ones who are gonna dig the road, dig the trenches. They lay down the concrete stones and all that. Probably the only component that are the community that cannot do, like grade. It's called grading. So those are the only aspects that now we have the expertise come in and do. But the implementation, the laying down of the infrastructure, all that has been done by the community. So the other question was
the interface with government during planning and implementation.
Yes. So I think for us, for us, when we started the implementation, we were working with the Nairobi City County government. There are some recommendations that we had given out. Then the implementation is now being done by a different entity, which is NMS. So probably there's some, as long as we have been involved, like in sharing the plans, giving advice, but I would say there's like the interface, especially from the organizations that participated. I think that one somehow have not been very good. But the good thing is that as long as the community are involved, the community are the ones who are implementing, the community are the ones who are even when it comes to like demolition, the NMS is not coming with those tractors to demolish. They're just, the community themselves are doing it on their own. But I think the interface where the organizations themselves are directly sitting on the table with government during the implementation, I would say that has been lacking. So is there another question? Sorry. I think where I am, dad. Regina?
Yes, I think we can now, Sabrina, if you have any comment, and Juliet, then I can go to the next.
Maybe I can just add an echo what Patrick has been saying about involving residents in the implementation phase. We at KDI usually have those who have been participating in the planning workshops take part in the implementation. What we do is we register who has been taking part in the meetings, and do have then contact lists and developed based on that, and those who are willing and wanting to take part in the construction, we develop a labor list. So the construction is of the projects are typically done by the residents surrounding the project site, as well as the group who eventually will run the site. And among the community, there are usually people who have particular skills, and then there are some who work as unskilled labor. And this way we make sure that a larger number of people are also benefiting from the construction process.
You have a problem with your connection.
You were not able to hear me? Hello?
Maybe the rest can hear you. I can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm not sure if I wasn't able. Okay, I will just repeat what I said. So I was saying that. Okay, I guess everyone else heard me, so I will not repeat what I said. Sorry, Gina. I think I was heard.
Okay, Juliet, anything to add?
Yes, I would like to probably comment on some of the issues I've seen raised in the Q&A that probably I'll be better placed to address. And one of the issues which was raised was a very pertinent issue in terms of the cost for professional services. And this is something which I know the common Mwananchi struggles with, given the scale of fees that go into paying a professional. You have to pay, in some cases, you have to start with the town planner, you pay the architect, you pay the engineer, you pay the environmental expert. And all these are costs that people feel are a bit too much, especially if you're just putting up a small structure. And what we do at AAK is encourage people not to go putting up structures without the proper approvals and design, because you find by the end of the day, you may be taking shortcuts by not paying a professional, but you end up spending a lot of money by putting up a structure that is not properly designed. You're going to use probably more materials, you're going to end up in trouble with the county officials, and you end up spending much more money than you would have if you approached a professional openly with your budget, with the kind of structure that you want to put, and be able to get the professional assistance at a fee that you would manage. So I would like to encourage people not to shy away from approaching AK, and especially for such noble ideas such as what is being done in Kibera, parts of Kibera, parts of Mukuru wa Jenga. We've been able also to give free professional advice where need be, as long as also pools of people can group together and come and ask for professional help. You'll be able to be given that professional help where it can be done. The other thing that we were able to achieve as AAK was actually not before what we call the ease of doing business, so that some of these fees that we were paying, you'd remember you had to pay fees to NEMA, you had to pay fees for National Construction Authority, and these are some of the achievements that we've been able to achieve through our advocacy effort in having some of these fees scrapped, so that it's actually easier in terms of applying for your development applications and getting approval. Of course, the major challenge remains corruption. In as much as probably we help you and you put in your application, you may encounter instances where you're not getting the approval as fast as you require it from the county officials, or you're required to part with something small. And to this effect, what we are pushing for as AAK is for all counties to adopt the e-development platform, where you're able to launch your application online and get your approval online. This has successfully been done through the collaboration of Nairobi County Government, AAK, and the World Bank. We're able to actually to have the e-development platform for Nairobi, and the same for Kiambu. So we are pushing for the other counties also to implement the same, so that we have more transparency, more ease of doing business, and it's cheaper and easier for the local person to get the approval very fast from the counties. I would also like to comment on an issue which was raised in terms of how we train our professionals. And being in academia, it's something that I would like to comment on, because we have to acknowledge there is a gap in terms of how professionals are being trained and actually what they're doing on the ground. And to this effect, I can attest that most of the major universities, what they have done is embraced a very open learning. So you find their practicals, or what we call studios in the universities, are being done on the ground with actual people. And this is also another avenue that can be explored, especially by informal settlements in their planning efforts, by reaching out to the universities and having the lecturers and the students participate in terms of their studios in carrying out studies that would actually help in terms of their planning efforts. So this is another area that we are building on to bridge that gap. I would also probably want to comment on an area which is very pertinent, especially to Kenya. We have very good laws, we have very good structures, we have very good institutions. But one of our participants actually highlighted this issue, which is very key in terms of how our government tend to work in a disintegrated way. And this is something that I don't have an answer in terms of what can be done, but it's something that we have to appreciate and something that we actually have to have at the back of our mind, that something that needs something to be done about it, because we have very good acts, we have very good structures, but you find one ministry is doing this, another agency is doing this, and they lack that coordination in between, so that we have overlaps of projects, we have overlaps of planning efforts, we have overlaps in terms of implementation even of our plans once they are in place. So this is something that I cannot give an answer in terms of exactly what can be done, but I appreciate it's a major gap that we need to find a way collectively of dealing with it. Regina, that's it for now, unless I see another question that relates to my area of expertise. Thank you.
Asante sana. And we're quite grateful to everyone. I see there's lots of robust participation. We have about 44 people online, so that's very exciting. I have a couple more questions. So for Patrick, Cecile Boucher asks, thank you for the very interesting presentation. My question relates to managing conflicts between groups within the participation process. How do you deal with conflicting needs? She's thinking of dump sites. They represent a great health risk for some vulnerable groups, such as children, but they are also a mean of subsistence for many scrap pickers. So that's the first question. How do you deal with conflict between different groups within the participation process? Then also on mobilizing and organizing the community, from Pascal Mukanga. Could you comment a little bit on how the gender balance issue was reconciled, seeing that our society is largely patriarchal, and for a given household, the man may be the automatic choice to represent a household in the formation of self. Then the other question I have is from Kahindi George. Kahindi Joroge, sorry, not George. I think this would be best suited to Sabrina or to Juliet on the matter of creating achievable building codes. What would be the role? Oh, actually, that's been answered. The role of training institutions, that's been answered. So I think let's start with those two questions, Patrick, and then we can.
Yeah, probably I can start with the Kahindi Joroge, just to comment a little bit. It's also that when you are doing the replanning in Mukuru, you also didn't follow the conventional planning methods. Because the conservation planning methods, if you are to follow them in an informal settlements, where Mukuru is about 609 acres, it's packed. So if you are supposed, if you are to plan for the roads, if you do the conventional standards for the roads, then the whole of Mukuru will be roads. So also in your planning process, we had to change the special planning areas give us that leeway to be able to change the standards to standards that we're gonna fit with the roads. The biggest roads in Mukuru is 12 meters. The conventional roads that size should be around 30 meters. So those are some of the things also that we changed in the planning process. I think there was the issue of who on mobilizing the community on the gender balance. I think what you showed is that when the people, because in each subcluster, as I said, they are to select 7 people who are going to represent them at the segment, the different segment level consultation meetings. So we had to ensure that the people who are selected at that level, we ensure that the people, if that subcluster elects a woman to come for a meeting probably on water sanitation, the next meeting they should probably give an opportunity for a youth to come. The next meeting they should give an opportunity for a person with disability to come, and the next meeting they should give an opportunity for structure owner. So there was that balancing, and we're able to check it when they are coming to the meetings. The other issue was on the issue of resources, and I think there are some of the questions that have been answering by texting. Each consortium was mobilizing their own resources, so the county was not providing for the community participation, because you are the ones who are leading the process and the community on creating those structures for community participation. You have to look for resources with our own means, so that we are able to actualize that structure. The county didn't provide for that. I think the only support they gave us was when we are having inter-consortium meetings. That's when they bring us together, probably they take us to a hotel, and then you're able to present what's happening, the progress for each consortium. There's another issue on children, involvement of children. I think I'm looking at these questions here. We didn't involve the children to begin with. I think doing the meetings, but something that we have learned, because right now we're still involving the community, especially when we are doing the last mile service connection. So we have started involving the children. In 2 weeks ago, we had a meeting with children to discuss the issues of sanitation and water. So it was a very interesting meeting, and we have learned at least it's proper. If it's some of the things that something will change, I think it's that. I think the voice of children is very honest, and it's honest, and they don't hide anything. So it's good to hear from them. So I think there was another issue on ensuring that the plants that are developed are not in isolation. And I think I'd answered that in the text, but just to mention that also the role of the planners was to ensure that the plans that are developed in Mukuru are also linked to the citywide plans. Like you can't develop a road that's not going anywhere. It's not connecting to the other city roads. So the planners, this was one of the roads, they are ensuring that if they're developing the roads that are being proposed, to ensure that so they are linked like a road. It's linked to the other city arterial roads. I think
Question of conflict.
conflict. Conflict. I think because of the level of interest in Mukuru. First, the plans are coming to change the status quo. Right now, if you go to Mukuru, they sell water between 5 shillings to 10 shillings. The plants will come and they want to bring water that is affordable. The plan, like right now, we are working on a pilot where people will pay 50 cents for 20 liters jerry can. So the cartels who are selling that water will feel these plants are not good for them. So there's that conflict. So there's that they feel, so they try to sabotage the plans. We have the structure owners also who feel once the government is involved, they're not gonna be, the government will come and do housing, then they're gonna lose. So they feel now these plans are not ideal. They're the ones who are supposed to be given the leeway to do housing themselves. There are issues of probably there are some people who are affected also who feel also, there are those who are affected or are fine, there are others who are affected, especially when opening up for the roads, who also feel, they feel that there's that feeling of, we didn't know these plans will affect us this way. So of course there's conflict, and as I said, Mukuru has 100,000 households, over 100,000 households. When you're dealing with such large number of people, you don't expect that everyone is going to support the project. Not everyone supported the project, but at least there was a sizable number, more than half of the people. I would say like 70% of the people have supported the project, so which is good enough. Over to you, Regina.
Thank you for that. I think I have a question here for Juliet as well. Have there been initiatives by AAK or experts within and without AAK to encourage some level of application of conservative planning, and conservative is in quotation, planning and design standards in informal settlement? For example, experts providing pro bono services for housing or infrastructure development. Then I've also got, I think, a comment from Pauline Bata, a comment, not a question. Akiba Mashinani Trust did a commendable job in the planning process for Mukuru. For them, it was not a one-size-fits-all approach, but best fit. Government should embrace this model when planning settlements for forced evictions during infrastructural development. And I think the other question, which is for Patrick, what are the chances of presenting the Mukuru planning process to the COG to enable counties to draw some lessons? So we'll start with Juliet, and then we'll move to Patrick. And Sabrina, we've not forgotten you, so we have some questions for you coming up as well.
Thank you, Regina, for that. I think as one of these I touched on in terms of when I was addressing the issue of professional fees. And yes, AAK is always available in terms of offering pro bono services. We have a few cases where we have worked with communities, and we continue working with communities. As long as, again, I emphasize it's a connective effort where we are being approached to help out, and we'll be able to put in a team to give services pro bono for such kind of initiatives. From a personal perspective, and out of my professional career, I have also worked in the informal settlements. I've worked in slum upgrading, mostly in Mombasa. And I can attest that some of the standards that we have, as Patrick said, are not applicable for slums and for informal settlements, because, for instance, he gave the case of the minimum road sizes that we require for our urban areas. And some of these standards are not practical. So again, this is an area that we've been trying to lobby to see whether we can come with more flexible standards that are more accommodative, so that we don't discourage upgrading efforts, and we don't I've seen also one of the participants alluding to the issue of gentrification, and this happens especially if you impose very high standards in an area and then the people are not able to cope either with the maintenance of the facilities that they have been offered or even the functionality of the facilities that have been offered. And a case in this is, for instance, when we just do new roads and we tend to do very wide roads, roads that are accommodating only motorists, roads that are not accommodating people who are walking, people who are using bicycles, or other non-motorized transport users, such as even the mkokoteni users. And we have to appreciate, like one of the things that we have with informal settlements is them using the road space as a public space. This is a space you find their children playing. This is a space you find them trading on. This is a space that you find them transporting their wares in their mikokoteni, or even displaying their wares in small makeshift structures or even on wheelbarrows. And once you just do a standard road, which is accommodating vehicles, then you're encouraging people to use them as a connection between point A and B. And one of the instances that is happening is actually what is happening with the new road across Kibera. And you can find people living in Langata just using it as an access road. And this is practically, should not be the case. It should be something that is designed for the people in there so that they can use this road not only for their access, but also as a public space, because we also have to appreciate they're very limited in terms of access to public spaces. So this is something that I would say would require a lot of lobbying, both from the professionals, the citizens themselves, to appreciate that they don't need roads just for vehicles, but they need these roads to be done as public spaces that they can enjoy, that they can use for access, and that they can use for furthering their livelihoods to that effect. Thank you, Regina.
Thank you very much. Can I pull in Sabrina at this point before we get back to the rest of the team? Sabrina, it would be useful if you could give us some of your insights, especially around the question on managing conflict, the question of standards, and the questions of ensuring gender balance, equity, and equality. And if you could also share with us some of the lessons learned from other jurisdictions outside Kenya.
Thank you, Regina. And maybe I'll start with the standards, because I think this is a very interesting discussion, which is not only being undertaken here in Kenya, but also in several other places. So I think what needs to be considered when talking about standards is who brought those standards here. And if we look to Tanzania, where I studied actually my master's, or I've worked in Zambia, the issues are pretty similar. And what all these places have in common is that these places used to be under British colonial rule at some point. And this is the period where urban planning standards and urban planning was introduced, but with a paradigm of racial segregation. So a lot of standards which are still being used today are informed by that time and have this underlying paradigm, which is why I'm very happy to hear that there are efforts to revise and adjust standards and make them more adjusted to the actual reality we're facing today. So what has been happening in Mukura is really great, that standards are being adjusted to the needs and the challenges on the ground, because they are not applicable to the reality today. And that's the same in other countries. However, the context is different, and that means the standards need to be contextualized and adjusted to the different places where they're used. And we cannot just use British standards all over Africa, and it would be the same in Europe. We couldn't use the same standards in one country to another. So I think that would be my input on looking at other places. And again, I think this goes a bit into what Juliet already said, that with adjusting standards, we can prevent gentrification, and ensuring that it's not just a certain cohort of people moving in after roads and buildings are upgraded to a certain standard, which would be probably found in a middle income neighborhood. On the issue of conflict, I think that it is normal that there are conflicting needs and conflicting interests in any planning process, and it's part of the task of a planner to mediate and weigh different interests and needs and challenges. I think it is acknowledging those and thinking about opportunities which might help people to come to an agreement. So it's about balancing and weighing those. And that's a big challenge, but I think that is what planners are tasked with. And on the issue of gender and the representation of different people in planning processes, I think it is about how to plan community engagement and about the chances and opportunities given to people. So, for example, considering the different times, or basically considering barriers for participation. So at which times are people available, and at other times they might not be available, or places where to undertake participation. All these things need to be considered when engagements are planned, and there are many more aspects, but I think I will just leave it at this point and hand over back to you, Regina.
Did I skip some questions for Patrick, or can I move on to a few more questions? Patrick, was there anything else you were supposed to comment on?
I have answered through
Okay.
texting.
Okay. So I think this is the last round of questions. So in addition to questions, I think we've also gotten very good comments from Imani Joseph. Thank you, Juliet, Sabrina, and Patrick. Very excellent discussions. The next opportunity is to continue interrogating and improving on community participation. The Mukuru process enabled involvement of people in processes, but the next step is ensuring people work by themselves in driving and holding the state to account during implementation. So thank you for that comment, Kimani. So the last questions for this afternoon session, I think, is one, how do we plan to ensure such projects directly benefit residents? It is labeled for Sabrina, but I think everybody can speak to it. How do we ensure that those processes are not hijacked by private citizens who are non-residents? Is it also possible to comment on land tenure, given that some slums are built by squatters on public land, while others actually have landowners with freehold? And then the last question, actually, it's just those two. So I think as we answer those two questions, I will also invite the panelists to give their parting shots. And in particular, because we are about to embark on Kibera planning, special planning area, hopefully we'll also have Mathare happening very soon. And we hear rumors about possible work in Korogosha as well. So maybe advice for those particular processes, especially those that did not benefit from preparing the ground like Mukuru did. I think that would be very useful to help us as we close this session. So I'll start with Rita, and then Patrick, and then we close with Sabrina.
Thank you, Regina. I think the issue of land is something that we have to agree. Kenya is one of the countries that is very challenging in terms of land tenure issues, especially if you're not talking of public land, you're talking of private land, you're talking of people grabbing land, you're talking of people holding land, you're talking of squatters on people's land. It's a very complex issue that I feel somehow we lost it right at the beginning. And it also makes planning very difficult in terms of implementing, because even as a planner, once we make our plans, we make our proposals, it's very difficult to implement on land which is privately held, on land which has certain conditions that you're not able to interfere with. We also have to appreciate that land is very expensive in Kenya. So even when you talk of compulsory acquisition, it becomes a very expensive affair for the government to undertake. So this is an issue that I would say, I don't know, maybe the other panelists have a comment on the same, but on my case, I feel we lost it, and it's something that we need a serious discussion as a country and a way forward in terms of making land more available as a capital, as a resource for the local citizen, and not something that is held by a few privileged Kenyans. And the other thing I would like just to comment, sorry, Regina, I forgot the other question, but I don't think there was anything touching Winnie on me, because the other one
give your just
parting shot.
That and give your parting shot and possibly advice for the other processes that are yet to come.
Oh yes, I remember now. I also wanted to comment on the issue of projects being hijacked by the middle income. And as I said, as Sabrina added, as Patrick has alluded, our standards tend to be very high, and we tend to design and develop spaces for the middle income and the high income, not for the low income. The reason being, even if you look at the affordable housing scheme that is being implemented now, you will find this housing being done with a lot of parking spaces. One thing people don't understand is that once you provide, say, these parking spaces, you provide these spaces for private cars, you're making the cost of this house to be way above what the low income would be able to afford. So again, it's the issue of standards. It's an issue also of how people are involved, not just having it on paper that you call a stakeholders consultation, but actually reaching the targeted population, the low income one, the local Wanjiko, so that they can have their input. You design with them. We have to also check our standards so that we achieve buildings and spaces that are designed and affordable for the low income earners, so that we stop pushing them out once we carry out slum upgrading. And this is very sad because I so
It was just me, or we've lost Juliet?
you can hear me?
Now we can, yes.
Okay, so as my parting shot is just to say, one, we need to review our standards and have standards which are custom made for local indigenous people. We need to engage the professionals more and build the gap between the professional and the local wananchi. And we need to embrace active participation in terms of planning, in terms of designing together with the people, for the people, And actually, out of that, I believe we can create not only informal settlements for the people, but we can create citizens designed at the people at the heart of the center. So it's very possible, and I encourage all of us, whatever we are, whatever we are doing, to come together and actually see how we can work with the people at the center. So thank you very much, Regina.
Thank you for your contribution today. Patrick, and then Sabrina.
Yeah, mine is brief. I think just to echo what Juliet was saying is that I think it's good to really, whatever we are doing in the informal settlements, I think it's good to really involve ourselves. I think there's this notion that people equate with poverty with lack of knowledge. So I think if you go there, you'll find that the community have so many ideas, very good ideas. So I think it's essential for in order to ensure that all the plans that you're developing are plans that are going to succeed, and the plans that are going to be implemented and people accept them. I think bottom line is to involve the communities, have a deep engagement with them. It's good, as I said, community engagement is not easy. Community engagement requires a lot of time, requires resources, but it's something that we need. It's essential. It is essential to do it, to ensure that whatever we are doing is not just to finalize plans, but to ensure that we are doing plans that are really reflective of the community aspirations. And also I think it's also good, as probably to Juliet again, to look at the standards that are being that are conventional standards. I think the good thing about the SP is you're able to now come up with your own standards somehow. So I think if you can look at that, and probably it's something that can be legally be put down as one of the things, one of the planning standards, different planning standards for informal settlements. I think that will greatly help improving our informal settlements. So thank you all for listening to me, and thank you for bringing us together. Have a good evening.
Asante sana, Patrick. Sabrina.
Thank you, Regina, and thanks to Juliet and Patrick. Really great inputs from the two, and also great questions we have been receiving. I think I don't have so much left to add. I think the only thing maybe to say is that it's what is required really in planning with people and designing with people is to, of course, consider and put residents at the center and have as many opportunities for participation, but also consider within that all the power dynamics and stakeholders who might have a say to think about this at the beginning of the process, to understand the context well, in which we are intending to plan, especially looking towards the Kibera special planning area planning process, which might follow, and to manage such power dynamics which could lead to the process benefiting only a few. So thinking of that in developing engagement structures is really important, and to make sure that various people are given a voice in the participation process. And we can learn a lot from Mukura, I think, and we can learn from other places around the world on how to develop engagement structures, which hopefully will help us to avoid having dominance from one group over another. And yeah, I think it is also important that we don't assume that if we solve one issue, all other issues will be resolved. So I think an integrated perspective is really important, and this is what we have seen as well in Mukura and in other places, that if there's sectorial integration, we can achieve more sustainable development. And I think that is it from my side. Thanks everyone for the great discussion.
I am extremely humbled, I think, to have been in the presence of this panel this afternoon. But even for the participants, I mean, having 44 people join the conversation, so far, I think only 2 or 3 have dropped off, so you've been loyal till the end. And making time, I think, for us to have this conversation. As I mentioned, this is the first of many conversations we hope to continue having with you. And hopefully in the future, we will co-convene with other partners, with AAK, with Amani Mashinani Trust, with Muungano, and with various other partners who are working on this. As we conclude, I think key lessons for me, or things that have stood out for me, is first of all, history matters. I think that was something I'd not thought about before. So history matters when we look at our standards, when we look at our laws, but even understanding the lay of the land, why certain structures, features exist where they are. So context is important. Laws and policies, particularly in Kenya and Nairobi, are facilitative of planning and designing with citizens. It is in how we utilize them to ensure their effectiveness. But also, as we use them, we then create an opportunity to review and improve them. It's not a simple or an easy exercise to ensure that people are at the heart of planning and designing. It requires a lot of time, it requires a lot of resources, it requires a lot of commitment, and you must be able to assess the power dynamics, the historical land issues, unpack all that, and bring people together. So it's not an easy exercise, but it's an important exercise. Government can be a facilitative partner or actor in the process, and often has usually been a facilitative actor in the process. However, they could do better if they improved on their coordination of the various agencies that are involved, the various institutions involved, not just in the planning process, but even in the implementation of the plan. So hopefully that is something we can have a better conversation with. And then I think the bottom line is that we should leave no one behind, including the professionals, including the academia. So not just within the community, but even outside the community, tapping into expertise, knowledge, and wisdom that could enrich the process. And I think something that Patrick said that was very key was that success lies with the people. And I think after saying that, there's not much more I can say. I want to end with a quotation that says, "There is no power for change greater than a community discovering what it cares about." Because once they know what they care about, they're able to put that into action. Please continue the conversation on our social media channels. They've been put in the chat, and we will also put in the social media access for Amani Mashinani, for MT, and for AAK, so that we can continue that discussion beyond this room. I want to thank you very much for making time today. We don't take it for granted. And I look forward to having more conversations with you. I want to invite my colleague Vera Bukachi, Daktari, to then close the meeting for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Regina. Nearly Daktari is more correct. I think this is just a closing and a vote of thanks to absolutely everybody who has attended. As Regina has mentioned, we're extremely humbled to have had so many of you attend what has really been an interesting discussion, and listening to it very quietly on the back, in the background. I think it's been very rich. Maybe one thing I just want to point out, even as we go off, I think one of the opportunities that we also think about is the so what. We've been talking about these conversations, talking about integrated engagement, talking about interdisciplinary approaches. And I think I just wanted to point out one project which we are hoping will be able to address some of this, and which we hope to be able to have some of you involved in. Again, you can please reach out to us. And this is a project we're just kicking off this year. We're working with the Architectural Association of Kenya, Akiba Mashinani Trust, University College London, and the Arab Engineering Firm. So that's quite interdisciplinary and led by KDI. So this multidisciplinary team and this consortium is we're hoping by combining a really long-standing record of research, of planning, of design, and of advocacy, we can start to think a little bit about infrastructure needs in the context of informal settlement upgrading. And what we are really trying to do through this work is looking at how we can have integrated and inclusive infrastructure frameworks. We're looking to develop something like this over the next year that supports not only sustainable development, but also poverty alleviation, equitable societies, and greater public health. As part of this, we are going to be working directly with the team at AAK, and as I said, Akiba Mashinani Trust, ARUP, and UCL. And we're going to have a number of engaging webinars and workshops, as well as professional development for those who are interested. So please watch this space. And if you are particularly keen to participate, please let us know. You have our contacts through social media, and you can also go onto our website if you need to. So I think just going to the next steps and what is possible, there are ways and means that we can be able to address some of these things. And thank you very much for attending this session. It's been really, really rich and wonderful. And as we close Urban October and look forward to World Cities Day, I think it's been particularly timely that we've been able to have this conversation, and we look forward to having even more with you in the near future. Thank you, Regina.